Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Andrew Torchio, and
Dr. Ashley?
today's episode on the Pangaea Health Podcast is one that actually rings home to us, not because we've experienced it, but because probably the most growing population of practice members, patients here at Pangea is pediatrics.
Yep, kids, for sure.
Kids. So, and we have 3 little girls. So we empathize for challenges on the home front when it comes to children's health challenges. So today's episode is on colic.
Yep, all about colic.
The C
And
word.
colic is really difficult because you're already coming out of a place where you just had this baby. All you want to do is bond and be together and care for it. And then you have a child that's inconsolable and
Yeah.
doesn't get to a place of quiet and peace. And it's just one extra added layer of stress on top of already trying to heal.
Heal from childbirth. So, I mean, it's extremely taxing on the mom, much more than the dad. But the dad feels it too because it's just
Definitely.
taxing on the whole
It's a whole household.
It's a whole household concern. I think that forever, personally, my opinion, I think forever, if pediatricians and doctors have just like kind of used it as a blanket term. I don't know. I mean,
No, still to this day, they don't
Right.
actually know what colic is. They don't know why the child is crying. So anytime you go to a pediatrician and they tell you it's colic, then that's it. It's just like, well, that's the end. You can't really do anything about it.
And the thing that like breaks my heart even more is there's not many solutions for it. So they say, "Oh, the kid will outgrow it." Meanwhile, mom and dad are literally drowning,
Mhm.
can't sleep, baby's inconsolable. It's just massively disrupting the sense of ease in the home front.
A lot of those children will get put on medication right from the very beginning for gastrointestinal. So they'll get put on a medication to maybe help with constipation to move things along. But for many people, it's not a resolution in any way.
Yeah, and if you're listening and you're like, "Oh, I've been there," or if you're listening and you're like, "Wow, that's interesting," typically the determining factor when labeling a child with colic is a child that cries for 3 hours a day, for 3 days a week, for 3 weeks.
Yeah, just threes.
All right, so it's the threes. Kids cry in general,
Yeah.
but when you have a kid that is like inconsolable, that changes the game.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, so there's a lot of different elements to consider if you're dealing with colic, and that's what we're going to break down. Are some of these challenges that if you're dealing with this right now, or if you know someone who's dealing with this, instead of just saying, "Hey, it's just part of getting through motherhood or fatherhood, and hopefully they grow out of it," you can actually make these changes and put an end to it, and look back and go, "Yeah, no, not my family."
Yeah, and the thing for me, the hard part when a pediatrician says that a kid will grow out of it is they'll grow out of that symptom and they'll grow into a new symptom. And so just because that issue resolved doesn't mean that all issues have been taken care of or even addressed.
Yeah,
Why
why
it's happening
you
in the
see this
first
when they
place.
take care of peds and children is, and then as they go into adolescence and adulthood, they grow out of the one thing and they grow into something else.
Yep, some other symptoms.
So we find evidence and clues of, a 15, 18-year-old who had that and now they had X and now they're dealing with Y.
Yep, yep. Um, I wanna because we're chiropractors, I do wanna talk about chiropractic research and the success rate with colic around chiropractic. So chiropractic does have a 94%
Yeah.
success rate.
We see it every week.
I was gonna say, I think our office probably fits right into that percentile.
100%.
And so with that being said, if you've never even considered chiropractic for this scenario, and sometimes you can't even think in this scenario,
Yeah.
I think before you even have a kid, you should know that this is a tool that you can have in your tool belt, and chiropractic should 100% be considered in helping with the issue.
Yeah, 1000%. I'm biased, but I think if you have a child and you have a pediatrician, you should also have a chiropractor. And what we know is that children who are well adjusted from birth, oftentimes you don't need a pediatrician except for an emergency.
Yeah. these kids are stuck almost into the state of fight or flight. So they're stuck in this stressful state. I'm going to show you kind of what can happen. I mean, I know that this is hard, especially if you're listening and not looking. But what can happen is that a child goes through a birth canal, especially a child that was perhaps a C-section delivery. When they're a C-section delivery, you're lifting up against gravity, and a lot of times they'll lift up underneath of the jaw,
Yeah.
up and around the ear canal. And what happens is it almost causes a sprain strain right at their upper neck.
Yeah.
So these first two bones in that upper neck hold your brainstem. This is everything that keeps a baby alive, and we're really where a child functions out of when they're first born. It's heart rate, it's respiration, it's breathing, it's your thermostat. It's everything that starts from right here. Anything you don't have to think about is a lot of times going to be originating right in this area. So when that kid comes out, they get a sprain strain at these top two bones. And these top two bones, because the brainstem goes right through here, when these bones have a sprain strain on them, they misalign very easily. And so now you have something, you have all this room for that brainstem to go through. Well, now you have something that shifted over and rotated, and you almost have this tension.
You do.
No, you do. You're right. You have this tension around that brainstem.
Neural tension at the brainstem.
Yeah, and even nervous system tension.
Which leads to a myriad of symptoms. I mean, you can't even it's hard to hit the target.
Yes,
because that neurology controls everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things is that it chokes off, it puts pressure into that brainstem, and because of that, it causes this nervous system, this child, to be in a state of fight or flight.
Yeah, so let's back up a little bit. If you're watching, you could see
it.
that demonstration. If you're listening, what you need to understand is that whether it's a vaginal birth or a cesarean birth, there's still a lot of strain put on the child's neck and just body in general.
100%.
So there's a lot of strain and stress put on baby. And when that strain and stress happens, it creates subtle misalignments of the anatomy of the upper neck, the bones of the upper neck, and that misalignment creates dysregulation of the child's brainstem and nerve system.
Yeah, dis-ease, and then it will eventually lead to dysfunction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that dysregulation or that dis-ease, lack of ease, which we find almost 100% of the time in any child that is suffering from something like colic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So if we move into, how we're able to help families and children with colic, the number one place is we assess the nerve system and the spine, and we find these areas of dysregulation or lack of ease. And I mean, like you said, Ashley, it's like 90% of them get better.
Yeah, it's 94% is all of the research. 94% is very high.
It's extremely high.
As far as success rate
Almost
goes.
a panacea for the symptom.
For this symptom,
issue.
sure. I think when you're talking about constraint in birth, whether it's natural or whether it's a cesarean, that definitely is a part of it. But you can even go further upstream, and you can start looking at mom and her pregnancy. And was there interuterine constraint? Meaning, was mom uncomfortable? Was her pelvis uncomfortable? Was her low back uncomfortable? All these things kind of go into how the baby was sitting in utero. Because even if the baby was sitting down to a corner and a head's kinked up to a side, almost how we snuggle up in the fetal position in bed, you can have interuterine constraint, even though you had the perfect birth.
So we're actually we have to go way back.
Go back.
So for a listener, if you have children, this is interesting because, the question is the state of mom's neuromuscular and neuro structural system, mom's state is then baby's state.
Yep.
And that's like a really trippy concept because people are like, so yeah, the state of my health determines the state of my children's health. Yes, I don't think it's that hard to understand.
No, people get that.
People get that. And so if you don't have any children and you want to start building your family, that's kind of a wake-up call to be like, okay, my neurology is going to determine my child's neurology.
Yeah.
And maybe now is the time to take my nerve system health seriously. And we have tons of patients that are early on in this process being like, I want my body to be its best so that I can start having a healthy family. And that's actually the place to start.
Agreed.
But if you can't start there, then you have to start where
we
can start, right? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Yeah.
So for children suffering with colic, moms, dads, if you're at wit's end, Number one, I mean, please, number one, look at the research, get them into it. And
Look at the nervous
Pangea,
system first.
get them into Pangea so that we can address neurology first.
Sorry. So then from the neurology, I think then you do have to look at the gut. The hard part is that most pediatricians will skip over the nervous system and go straight to the gut.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying the gut's not an issue. And we do know there's a gut-brain connection for sure. But if this baby is being breastfed, then you have to look at mom's diet. Because if there is something that's causing distress in that baby, it's going to be coming through their food and what they're eating.
Through the food source. So when we talk about the gut, one of the ways that we combat this at Pangea, if we get the child's nervous system cleared out and they're still not responding, then we move on to the gut.
Yep.
The way that we address gut issues is by doing a food sensitivity test on mom.
Yep. So food sensitivities is passed down from mom to baby. So if mom is sensitive, baby is also sensitive. Children don't get their food sensitivities from their dad. They usually always come down through the mom. So
because of the breast milk.
yeah, but even sensitivity wise, if you're sensitive to pollen, usually a child won't be unless it's developed later in life.
Okay.
Usually most
Immunologically, it gets passed down through
from mom.
Right.
Yep, you got it. And so when we can do food sensitivities on mom, if she comes back sensitive to dairy or bananas or whatever it may be, then the child also will be sensitive. So if mom continues to eat those things and nurse, the baby is just showing more of a reaction.
Yeah, and for the listeners and watchers, the way that happens is mom's immune system has a response that's triggered from the food.
Yep.
And mom shares IgG and IgA immunoglobulins through breast milk.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
And so mom's sharing that sensitivity through an immune response through breast milk, and then baby's body starts to react to it.
Correct. So now you start getting digestive issues.
Digestive distress.
That can cause the colic. That's why that football hold when you have a child face down and the hands almost kind of putting pressure onto the stomach. It would just be like any adult that's having a stomach ache and you kind of curl up, you put pressure on there. That's why a lot of times those kids get relief laying in that is because it kind of puts pressure on that.
Yeah, well, let's take a little bit of a detour because this is a valuable conversation. I've had multiple patients come to me and say everything's going great with little Jimmy, and then we start introducing food, and now it's like, he's crying all the time and it seems like he's gassy and bloated. So because we're in this phase of life right now with our 1-year-old, what is the proper time if this is a breastfed baby? Let's just stay in that lane.
Okay.
When is the proper time to start adding in food, and which foods do you add in first? Because I think that a lot of people just kind of assume that like, oh, he's 6 months old now he can start eating Cheerios.
Yeah. So food-wise, I always look for 3 things with a baby. You want to make sure they can sit up on their own unassisted. You want to make sure that they can grab, so they have that pincher reaction to grab and then can actually put the food in their mouth.
On their own.
Yeah. And then the last thing you want to watch for is teeth. When the teeth come through and there's actually teeth in the mouth, it's telling you that the digestive system is ready to start processing food. Now, this isn't all food because grain is the one thing that when a child gets teeth, grain is the last thing that actually can be digested. So it's really not until that child gets molars in the back can they start breaking down that amylase and start having the enzymes to break down.
This is a powerful conversation because this is a question that's not very well addressed by the outside world.
Correct.
So types of food that we start with.
So types of food that we start with, and again, I always check my food sensitivities because I've had a baby that was sensitive to beef and banana, because I was. And so she was spitting up a lot, and she didn't seem like digestively it would bother her, but she would spit up. And
she also got rashes.
Yeah, she would get rashes.
Body rash.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but enough that you'd be like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, like an eczema, like patch. And you're like, that's not normal. What is going on? And so I started eliminating all the stuff, all the common sensitivities, the dairy, the wheat, the gluten, the yeast, eggs, all of this stuff.
This is why you're breastfeeding.
While I was breastfeeding. Yeah. So now I'm getting to the point where I'm not eating anything, and she's still having this issues not all the time.
Not eating any of the stuff that you were reacting to.
Correct. Yes. Well, it felt like I got to the point where I wasn't eating anything. I'm like, okay, I have to eat all the same things every day because I've gotten rid of all of the common food sensitivities. So at that point, I was like, enough is enough. I took a blood test. I was severely reactive to bananas, and then beef was my secondary one. And I thought to myself, that's what you eat all the time.
Yeah.
And so one
Bananas and smoothies, and we do eat a lot of organic grass-fed beef.
yeah, we buy a cow every year. And so, we remove those and we remove those that got started to heal up, and then eventually we introduce them. So I think knowing your sensitivities is super valuable, but because we do that, egg is a lot of times egg is like the perfect protein. So egg, avocado, olives, black olives. We do a lot of fat. Anything that's really high in fat is almost the first thing that we introduce with every single kid.
Yep,
Yep.
yep. So our 15-month-old has not had any grains.
No.
She breastfeeds and eats avocados, eggs, protein,
Yep. This morning she had Canadian uncured bacon and
eggs.
eggs. And then she had mango as a
So I bring that up because I've had a lot of moms come in and all of a sudden things get wacky when they start introducing food.
Yep.
And I'm like, whoa, let's pause on that. Let's go back to the basics. And a lot of times symptoms start to go away and child is much more relaxed and at ease.
Yep.
So last piece here before we wrap this one up, let's talk about chemical stressors, because chemical stressors are at the foundation of neurological dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
So without getting too much into the weeds on this, there are many different forms of chemical stressors. Our environment is very toxic.
Yeah.
I don't have to convince anyone of that. So the best thing to do with your baby, with your child, is try and create a home environment that is as toxic free as you can get,
Yeah.
external and internal.
I mean, sometimes I don't think people even know what that means. It's so hard because you look at baby products and
Most baby products are very toxic.
yeah.
That's
And so that's really hard. I mean, there's tons of lawsuits right now with the toxic baby food that they've been putting out that have massive amounts of heavy metals in them. The baby powder in itself that people were putting on their child's genitals, knowing that it's causing cancer. I mean, it's really this sounds so terrible, but it's really hard almost to trust a company unless you've really, really, really researched it. So,
do your own research, and we use Environmental Working Group
yep,
for a lot.
yep,
So
scan a lot of stuff.
ewg.org or .com, I don't know.
BWG. I think it's org.
They put a lot of third-party testing out, so you can go through your home and scan your baby products, like
Yep.
the wipes. We use water wipes,
Yep.
all natural.
Some aloe in it.
Diapers.
No chlorine. I make sure that they have it's usually like a wood pulp or like a grain pulp inside of it. So like no paraffins, I'm not looking for anything
A
that's
lot of oil products too.
petroleum-based
Petroleum.
products is what we try to steer clear of.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. And we use a lot of essential oils. We tend to gravitate towards doTERRA, but we use essential oils for baths. We don't put soaps in the bath.
nope.
We use essential oils.
Olive oil, coconut oil, skin-wise.
Yeah, it's just about adopting this lifestyle that really moves the needle for your family's health. And the hot topic, anything else?
No, I wanna hear your hot topic.
Well, the hot topic is one of the concerns that always comes up is around vaccinations. And I always tell families, do your own research before you do anything.
I agree.
And there's a plethora of information on both sides, and you should go to both sides. And this is your child's health. So you should weigh that decision very heavily before you make that decision.
Agreed.
And my rule of thumb that I tell every new parent, if they want information, I have it. But my rule of thumb is you can always go back and do it later, but you can never undo it once you've done it. And that's kind of like my advice that I share with people. So it just gets them thinking like, okay, this is very serious coming from a doctor. How can I make this decision for myself?
Yeah. I think for me, and don't get me wrong, I know a lot and I have resources for sure, but for me it's like, okay, if I'm gonna vaccinate against that, would I know how to take care of that naturally at home? Let's say my kid gets measles. Would I know what to do? I know how to handle a fever. I know what to do with skin issues. Would I be able to do that? Yeah, I'd be able to do that. So I feel good about that. On the other side of it, and no matter what that illness is, if I'm vaccinating for it, if my child got it, would I be okay with that? And would I support their system through it? Versus on the other side, let's say I had a reaction, would I know how to handle that? And again, I feel like I would, but I feel like that one also caused me a lot more work and maybe a little more heartache.
Yeah, and the reason that I bring this up as we start to wrap this episode up is because there are more and more adverse reactions, and or I should say, there's more and more people becoming aware of the adverse reactions, and that's why we bring it up, because there is a correlation with colic and adverse reactions that do, in fact, occur from vaccinations.
And the United States is the only country that vaccinates on the first day of life. And so even if that's something that you're looking at, because the Hep B is the very first day, right when that baby comes out, and no other country does that. So
It's interesting.
it is interesting. I think it's something that should be looked at for sure.
Yeah.
So if there's any way, always trust your intuition as a mother, as a father.
Yes.
And if intuitively something tells you that there's something wrong, you're not wrong in thinking that. That's all I'll say.
So we covered a lot here with colic.
Yep.
We give you some great resources. And hey, listen, I mean, we're in the Bend community in Central Oregon, and we're not going anywhere. We're here as a resource for you. And certainly our mission is to help families like yours not just survive, but to thrive.
Yeah. And by all means, we're not speaking out of turn either. I mean, we have our own children. We're in the trenches. They're growing up. So the ages anywhere from a baby up to 8. I mean, we're in it.
We're in it. We're in it with you.
We would never tell you anything that we wouldn't do ourselves.
So thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed today's episode, give it a thumbs up, like it. You can, of course, subscribe to our podcast, because each month, we're bringing you 2 episodes just like this.
Yep.
And you can become a health expert just by listening.
Yeah. Become your own advocate. Take your power back. This is going to give you full freedom when it comes to your health.
All right. Well, we enjoyed this episode. Hope you did too. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.